Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Friday Charge from the EV Geek Podcast. We're your hosts, Joel and Sebastian. And today, March 21st, 2025, we've got a handful of topics to talk about, including Mercedes has a new EV, BYD showed off some pretty amazing charging stuff, Rivian Police Cars, and a couple other stories. So without further ado, let's plug in and get started. All right, y'all, let's start off with our first topic for this week, which is actually a topic that should have been on last week, but somehow I completely missed it.
You had one job, Sebastian.
I don't know how I completely missed this one. Mercedes has finally actually unveiled their all-new CLA EV. So late last week, Mercedes unveiled their all-new CLA sedan, and it'll be the first to be built on Mercedes' new MMA platform. Mixed martial arts, right?
Look a wow.
The MMA platform is an EV-first platform, which means the CLA is going to launch as a full EV. However, there is an expected mild hybrid variant coming later. The new platform is roughly 2.5 inches longer than the outgoing model and about an inch taller. The CLA will be available with two battery packs, a 58 kilowatt-hour unit and an 85 kilowatt-hour unit. However, in the US, we're only going to get the bigger battery, obviously. We don't get the small batteries over here. Nope. Mercedes is claiming up to 492 miles of range on the big battery in the WLTP cycle, which is very generous. So I would expect it to be pretty close to 400 miles in the US, which is still a respectable number. The new CLA will also be getting a brake-by-wire system, and in normal conditions, most braking would be done through regen, which is expected from a ground-up EV. Mercedes is claiming up to 200 kilowatts of regen ability, which in a mid-size sedan, it seems pretty respectable. The new CLA is an 800-volt class vehicle, and Mercedes claims it can add 186 miles of range in 10 minutes. Again, that's 186 WLTP miles, not 186 EPA miles. There's going to be a front-wheel drive and an all-wheel drive variant, and Mercedes was proud to point out that their all-wheel drive variant is able to completely disconnect the front motor when it's not needed to, kind of preserve some efficiency. So your only losses, in theory, on an all-wheel drive car are going to be due to weight and not due to, dragging that motor along. The CLA is going to use a new software stack Mercedes is calling MBOS, which is AI enhanced.
Woo!
To control various parts of the car. Whatever that means. Naturally, the vehicle will also support OTA updates for every model of the car. For driver's assistance... Thank you, Siri. For driver's assistance, the CLA will feature what is referred to as Level 2++ driver's assistance. Mercedes-Benz owners will be able to purchase the software package at any time during their ownership and have it apply to their car over the air, so similar to purchasing something like Tesla's FSD. Finally, pricing is currently unknown, but I'm expecting, if I look into my crystal ball here, $52,000 starting price. That's my guess.
That's a generous guess there, Sebastian. This is a Mercedes.
Well, looking at the outgoing CLA starts at $44,000.
Gotcha.
So I'm adding the EV tax and tariff tax or whatever else tax, and 52 is my crystal ball number.
I'll say 60. 59,999. That's what I'll say. If whoever's right owes the other person lunch. There we go.
I think it's a pretty interesting looking car. There's a couple angles on it that don't work for me. I don't love the light bar and then the grille separate type design on the front a lot.
Yeah, let me go back to the picture here and I'll kind of show you what I like and I don't like too. So
I also truly don't know what it means to have your car software be AI enhanced and it says it's to control parts of the car. I don't want an AI controlling the car.
Yeah, I want to drive the car. So
well, it's like not even that. Like I'm not even talking about like AI for like driver's assistance features. I'm just like I don't need an AI to adjust my motor tuning or something.
Yeah.
And they don't have enough detail to tell me what that truly means. I'm just like, what does this mean?
So the front is giving off like Mustang Mach-E vibes. The little part by the emblem. It's giving me Mustang Mach-E vibes. I don't know why. I think that's what I'm getting from it. But yeah, it does have some odd lines to it. It really doesn't look like anything that's out on the market now. But yeah, what don't you like? You don't like the front grille? Is that what you said?
So I think the front grille would be fine if it didn't have the light bar above it. It's
True.
a
Yes,
weird.
I totally agree with you on that. Yes.
It's kind of a weird combination of. It's like they smacked together a bunch of the EV design languages and
Uh-huh.
called it a day. Like I think it's a little too busy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the rear end is fine. I don't have any complaints with that. And obviously the side profile is fine. It's a 3-box sedan.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the front end is where I'm kind of a little hint.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I'm glad a Mercedes coming out kind of with their true platform. I love the interior. I mean, I think that's really cool. The ambient lighting, very bright. I like that. But yeah, you're right. That light bar's throwing me off. It kind of reminds me, the Cadillacs have their front grills lit up on their cars, and the Lyric Optic and Escalade IQ, but they don't have the light bar. So
Right.
I think that's going to be a lot of lights coming down the road. That's going to be a lot of lights.
Especially if you look in that second picture, the one that also has the lighted the lights in the grill too.
Yes. That's a lot of lights. That's a lot of lights.
That is a lot of lights.
Yeah, and yeah, that's gonna be bright coming at you. So yeah, but yeah.
That said,
Yep, I love it.
I'm happy to see. Yeah.
So yeah, Mercedes and Audi for some reason. Little Rock are the two dealerships we've had trouble getting into to review cars. So I'm working on it, but hopefully by the time hopefully soon we'll be able to get in there and try to and be able to review some Mercedes or Audis. But yeah, I'd love to get our hands on this for a couple hours and see what kind of fun we can have with.
All right, so moving on. GM has named a new partner for its self-driving cars. Earlier this week, NVIDIA and GM announced a strategic partnership to develop cars, streamline manufacturing processes, and robots. The first partnership mentioned was to use NVIDIA's Omniverse 3D graphics platform, which GM will use to run simulations to find areas to increase efficiency and minimize downtime on its assembly lines. Cool. Mm-hmm. GM also announced that they plan to use NVIDIA's Drive AGX system in future vehicles, which runs an NVIDIA proprietary OS and has plenty of horsepower to evaluate complex self-driving scenarios. Notably, GM is not the first automaker to announce a shift to the Drive AGX platform. You may remember we have recently talked about Volvo offering free upgrades to some of their current models to be on this platform. Mm-hmm. And previously, automakers such as Mercedes-Benz, Hyundai, Lucid, Toyota, and many others have also announced their move to this platform. So really, I just thought it was cool. GM had a pretty decent little thing going with Cruise for a while of doing their own self-driving stuff in-house, and they were even beginning to work on doing their own chipset and own software stack for it. And then Cruise had a couple little mishaps there, and they decided to shutter the company instead of try to rebound on it. And so it's interesting to see kind of how they're going to move forward now, and looking at future production vehicles. If they move to this NVIDIA system, do they keep Android Automotive, or do they go back to kind of a more proprietary OS, or does Android Automotive remain the customer-facing side, but then the car is a completely different platform underneath? I don't know. I don't know how that will look for the future, but it's interesting because they put a lot of work into moving every single one of their models over to this new infotainment system. So I'll be interested to see if they then decide to just dump it, or if they just use it to build on it.
Yeah, is it going to be integrated, or are we getting something like totally brand new? I totally understand what you're talking about. Yeah, this is cool. I mean, a lot of AI working their way into these cars. With the Mercedes and this. I mean, it's interesting how this is going to work out. I noticed in the article there was nothing about cost. They didn't say how much this is going to cost. GM for this partnership. They're not going to tell us. But yeah, I mean, this is really cool. I'm glad to see. When we review cars, one of the things we hark on the most is the software and infotainment, and I think that's where a lot of these cars can make the most improvements on. I mean, every car we reviewed, it drives pretty well. I mean, we haven't gotten a car and says, oh, this just drives like crap. It's a horrible driving experience. What we say is when we get in a car is the software is glitchy, don't know how it's laid out, this and that. So I'm glad that we're starting to see some automakers. Kia, if you're listening, you need to do this too. You start taking their infotainment seriously, because that's the most users experience. I mean, most people use Apple's phone because of how it's laid out and how it works and just how it's integrated. They don't use it because it just the way it looks on the outside. So yep.
All right, let's talk about something cool. BYD has shown off 10C charging. So earlier this week, BYD showed off their new Super E platform, as they're calling it, Super E platform, which allows their cars to charge even faster. This is BYD's first 1000 volt platform, so not 800 volt, not 900 something volt like the Lucid's, 1000 volt. And the cars will be able to charge at up to 1000 kilowatts or 1 megawatt. BYD claims these new vehicles will be able to recoup up to 249 miles of range in 5 minutes. Now, I'm sure that's 249 miles of range in the CLTC cycle, which is even more generous than the previously mentioned WLTP cycle.
Yeah.
But still, a megawatt's a megawatt.
Yep.
You can't, downplay that too much. The Super E platform also features new motor designs, which are capable of generating up to 777 horsepower from a single electric motor. Which, that one's pretty spicy.
Yes.
And, naturally, being able to charge at a megawatt does you no good if there are no megawatt chargers for you to plug into. Yep. However, lucky for you, or at least lucky for you if you live in China, BYD plans to build out about 4,000 of these chargers around China.
Irene.
Which, China's a big country. So, and is it 4,000 plugs or 4,000 stations or who knows? I just thought this was cool. In the US, we get excited when we see cars charge at 350 kilowatt. And typically the cars we're seeing charge at 350 kilowatt are also like 200 kilowatt hour battery packs. So from a C rate standpoint, you're talking like a 1.5 C, 2 C max maybe on most US cars. And so, meanwhile in China, we were all blown away. Previously, they were doing like 5C charging. So they were taking 70-something kilowatt hour packs and charging them at 400 kilowatts. And we're like, holy raw!
Yeah.
And now they're taking the same 70 kilowatt hour packs and charging them at 1,000 kilowatts. And you're just like, goodness. So this is cool. And this is kind of when we start talking about, the US auto industry and the cars we get here versus the technology that you get in China and you're starting to get in Europe and other places, from these Chinese automakers. This is the kind of stuff that, we're going to have to get up to keep up. And especially in like European automakers where you can buy Chinese electric cars. They're going to have to start to keep up with stuff like this and actually make some of these technological advancements on their own. Otherwise, these Chinese automakers are just going to keep eating their lunch.
Yeah, we're going to see it start. It will start in China, but like you said, it will slowly start spreading to, Europe. I believe BYD is available in Australia. We'll start seeing it in those areas as well. And then here in the US, we're still stuck at, charging at 150 kilowatts. It's mind blowing. I don't know why. And I know it's money and I know it's subsidized over there. So it's like unlimited funds for these automakers to do all this stuff with. But at some point, we've got to get serious about the infrastructure here in our country. We got to get serious about charging speeds because that's what's holding back EV adoption is having to sit for 30 minutes to charge your car. No one wants to do that. 10 minutes, yeah. 12 minutes, sure. 15, yeah. If we can get to that, perfect. Because that's like what a stop is. If you have to stop somewhere to get out, go to the bathroom, do what you need to do, 10, 15 minutes, you're in and out. We are EV drivers. We take our time. We get out, relax. We walk around, change toddlers' diapers if you have to, like Sebastian does. I don't have to do that anymore. But we got to get to this point, or if not now, the Chinese automakers are just going to start blowing away the competition. Like I said, it's not when they get to hit the US. It's not if, it's when. They're going to get here somehow. We can't fend them off forever. They're going to find a way in. They're going to get here somehow. Or their technology is going to get here somehow, but so we've got to step up here and figure out this charging infrastructure and boost our cars' charging speed without worrying about frying the batteries.
Yeah. And because in the US, we technically have megawatt charging. We have the MCS standard, but it's currently only really used on electric semi-trucks.
Yep.
And so those aren't charging at some super high C rate because they're a gigantic battery.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, they're not really pushing the envelope there, right? Yep. Like, yes, megawatt charging by itself is a cool concept, when you consider it, like this is talking about pushing 1,000 amps.
Yeah. Through
a cable that you as a human can still wield that's not using like 1-inch copper per conductor, like technologically Still super cool to do megawatt charging, just period. I mean, the whole megawatt charging plug, yes, it's a big plug, but it's really not that big. So like from a technological standpoint, it's super cool, but we're not really doing anything with it that's pushing any boundaries. It's not really pushing the envelope any.
Yeah,
but
and we're not in the U.S. We're not really pushing the envelope when it comes to EVs. We're just you have some cars out there that are just compliance cars. We have some people out there that are doing great. I mean, we still don't have Teslas that charge. The new Tesla Model Y still doesn't charge 800 volts. I mean, that's just something you think would be standard by now, and it's not.
It has the exact same curve as the outgoing car, the outgoing car was fine.
Yep,
but it's not class leading or amazing. Yeah.
And if you watch the out of spec video, it's actually a little bit less efficient, even though Tesla says it's supposed to be more efficient. So it doesn't jive.
It has the same battery pack. Yeah.
Yep. Just they put lipstick on is basically what they did. So
Yep. All right, moving on. Nissan has announced a new battery deal. So Nissan, it will become the first Japanese automaker to make a deal with SK On, which is the South Korean company. SK On will supply Nissan with roughly 100 gigawatt hours of US-made batteries for its future EV projects. This is enough battery capacity to build roughly 1 million EVs with current kind of typical battery sizes. It's expected that these batteries will be used for EVs built at Nissan's Canton, Mississippi plant, which the company previously spent around $500 million retrofitting 4 EVs. The Canton plant currently builds Nissan Altimas and Frontiers, and previously also built a Titan, which I believe the Titan line is the one that's been retooled for EV production. As someone who used to drive a Nissan Frontier, I saw Canton and I was like, wait a minute, this is familiar. Because I remember there was a sticker inside the door that was like proudly assembled. And anyway, this deal will also provide SK On with roughly $660 million and will support roughly 1,700 jobs. You may remember that SK On previously has partnered with Ford and Hyundai in the US as well, and this new deal will increase their total US production capacity to over 180 gigawatt hours annually. It's a lot of batteries.
It's a lot of batteries. I mean, this is good. I mean, Nissan is struggling right now. I mean, basically they have the Leaf and the Aria, which are not, groundbreaking EVs, So, yeah, I mean, great partnership. Glad that this is happening, and it's only going to benefit Nissan, which they need help with. If they're not going to merge with someone, they need some help. So hopefully this will help reduce their costs so they don't have to do this in-house. But yeah, good news. They picked a good company to work with, so kudos to Nissan.
Hopefully it creates more jobs here. I mean,
more jobs for us. Hopefully it gets us some different models too of Nissans as well.
Yep. All right, and our final topic for tonight was one I just thought was cool. Rivian Police Cars?
Woo woo.
Whoop whoop. Whoop woo. Rivian's first police cruiser has made its debut in the city of Palo Alto, California. Palo Alto's mayor debuted the new police vehicle earlier this week, praising Rivian's, quote, relentless technical innovation, comparing Rivian's mindset to that of the city of Palo Alto. The mayor also states that the vehicle offers more interior space than their current SUV cruisers like the Ford Explorer and Dodge Durango. I don't know why I typed in Jeep Durango on my notes. Anyway.
It's not a car, Sebastian.
It's not a car. There are some final upfits that still need to be done to the vehicle before it's actually ready to hit the streets, such as installing lights and sirens and a push bar and whatnot. It does look to me like this is the standard range LFP model, just kind of basing on wheels and whatnot, which would make sense as A, that's the cheapest model, and B, that's honestly the one that's made to be abused, right? Yep. You can take an LFP pack and charge it to 100% every day, whatever, and they generally don't have that much degradation because of it. So I just thought this was interesting. I think electric vehicles as police vehicles makes a lot of sense in a lot of situations, especially when you consider, most of these vehicles spend all day idling anyway. So it's cool to me to see more departments do this. I remember when we lived in Arkadelphia had a fleet of, at that time, Toyota Camry hybrids. Oh. And they bought them in like 2008, 2009, and that was what the entire department ran. And it made sense. Yep. Because 90% of the time, they were just sitting there, just idling. Yep. And I mean, that was, of course, 2008, 2009, so there weren't really any EV options at that time. Yep. But to see a little town like Arkadelphia make the jump, was pretty sweet. It was, and they were still rocking them when I was living there. 10 years later, like they were still there, had very minimal maintenance costs, very minimal, downtime, etc. They worked.
Yep.
And so an electric vehicle is just a step beyond that, right? And so, yeah, I just think this is a cool situation, a cool use case. We've seen some cities in California do like Model 3, Model Y police vehicles. I think somewhere someone is doing a Lucid police vehicle, although that one might be more of a show vehicle, considering it's an expensive
That's the
car.
captain's car.
But yeah, I just think that's cool. NYPD, of course, has always done these kind of little test initiatives with kind of interesting vehicles as well. And I think it'll be cool to see if this actually ends up spreading to more rural communities or not California and New York City areas.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, for 16 hours a day, a cop car is not moving. It's just sitting in either, most times, in most places, each officer has their own car. So it's sitting in their driveway, not being used. Yep. Or it's sitting at the police station, not being used. So it makes sense to do this. But my thing is then if you do this, you're probably not then able to take the car home with you, since it probably needs to charge at the station. So, which is fine with me. I know some police departments require the cars to stay there, some don't. So yeah, I mean, this just makes sense. I mean, these cars they sit a lot, unless they're sitting running radar, or they're sitting watching traffic lights, or things like that. Especially in small towns like where we live, we don't see many police chases. So
even if you do see police chase, they're not going on for hundreds of miles.
No, they're not. Yeah, by then someone else that's out of jurisdiction, someone else is taking it over. So it's not like
they put it into through other means.
Yeah, through other means. A fun pit maneuver or something like that.
If you're in Arkansas, if state police shows up, they pit maneuver you, and then it's over. It's
That's
all. Nothing the state police loves more than
doing a pit maneuver. There's whole YouTube channels and Facebook Reels dedicated to it.
Yep,
Arkansas police. Yep, Arkansas State Police doing pit maneuvers. Yep, all the time. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I think maybe it makes more sense if we can get the price of these EVs down a little bit more, to where if they could get a $25,000, EV and get it outfitted and not be too costly for them.
Of course, I'm going to do.
Uh-oh, Sebastian's doing something. That's scary. He's thinking. I see smoke coming from his ears and his nose. He's looking for something.
That was the statistic I thought. So the average cost of a police car when you do the base vehicle and upfitting costs is roughly around between like 60 to 80 grand.
Yeah.
Per vehicle. So if you look at something like a Tesla Model Y,
which is 40,
you're probably still pretty close to that same equivalent gas vehicle cost.
Yeah, 40 for the car, 20 for the installs. I mean, I could be wrong, but it could be more than that. So,
yeah. This looks like a police Ford Interceptor utility, so the Explorer.
Yep.
The vehicle by itself is around 50 grand.
Yep.
And then you upfit it.
Yep.
But yeah, so it's just like, even then, like, they don't necessarily need to get that much cheaper for it to make sense either.
Nope.
I think the R1S is probably still too expensive to be widespread.
Just a little.
But I could see Ford, if they ever do, because I guess Ford, technically, you can get a F-150 Lightning in a police package. They call it the SSV, I believe.
See pictures of that online.
If Ford ever does like a electric Explorer on the same platform, I could very easily see that being a switch to make, Anyway.
Yep. I mean, the only initial cost would be to outfit the police station with chargers, but
right. I mean, that in theory is a one-time cost.
That's a one-time cost, and don't know how many you need, but I'm sure, depending on who's running the country, maybe there would be grants available and things like that for you to do that, or there may not be grants available for you to do stuff like that. So, yeah.
Right. All right, Joel.
Yes.
Why don't you tell me what we drove?
We haven't driven anything last week.
We didn't?
Last weekend?
Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that?
Why can I never remember what we've driven? Maybe that's because my day job is so crazy that I can't remember what
I'm gonna sit here and smile.
This is the
remember.
Second freaking week in a row. I can't remember what we've driven. I tell you what we released, but that's not what we've driven. What did we drive? Wasn't the Prologue, was it?
No.
It was not the Polestar. Nope. Oh, the Hummer and Sierra EV. There we go. I remembered. Yay, me. Not really. So yeah, I'll let you talk about the Sierra EV because you got to take it home overnight and you had a love affair with it. So I'd like to get more details on that. You know.
So yeah, so Friday of last week, Friday afternoon, I got to make the trip up to Benton and pick up a 2025 Sierra EV Denali Extended Range. So it was the smaller battery pack, but that's okay.
Yep.
And man, so nice. Interior was excellent, like very, very top-notch stuff, especially from GM. Like especially for a GM vehicle, the interior was top-notch. Plenty of range, obviously, because it has a 180 kilowatt hour usable pack. Super Cruise was great. Super comfortable to ride in. Sound system was actually semi-decent. I was a little skeptical on that one because it's only like a 7-speaker system. And yeah, I loved it. If I had a way to get 93 grand, actually that one's on their lot right now for 83 grand. If I had a way to get 83 grand, I would probably buy one in a heartbeat.
And they may take a couple off. You can maybe get it for 80, 79,999. We know people down there.
Miles on it now.
We know people down there. So yeah.
It's got a few miles on it now, you know. I need a little bit of a discount.
So question, you drove it at night. How did it light the road? I mean, it has a lot of lights in the front.
Were awesome.
That's what I figured. So yeah.
The headlights were awesome, and it did all the cool stuff, which I don't even think we talked about in the video because it was during the day when we actually shot the video. But like it did the whole cornering lamps, and so like when you turn the wheel, it would, you know, and the lights would bend, and like it did all sorts of very cool, very good stuff. They were excellent. It was a very crisp, bright white light. Yeah. It did the auto high beams, of course, and it was actually a better tuned system than most of the auto high beams I've used in other vehicles where the car is like almost at you and then they finally kick down.
I don't even turn auto beams on in my Tesla. It's just it doesn't work. It's just on off. I don't leave them on. So so I got to drive it that afternoon, I believe. So we had Cars and Coffee that morning. Thanks everyone who came out to Cars and Coffee. If you're watching this, we had a great time. Thank you, Levia's Roastery, for having us. We got a tour of the place, heard an amazing story of, you know, the history of coffee and how he brought it here from Guatemala, and how he brought his coffee here from Guatemala, not bringing coffee from Guatemala. So great story. And then we got that, you know, play around with the Sierra EV for a while. It was awesome. I mean, I had driven a Sierra EV. Now Silverado. You drove Silverado. So yeah, you drove the work truck, right?
Mm-hmm.
I drove another one that we had from another dealership, and I could tell the Sierra, even though they're built technically on the same platform, the Sierra EV was just more luxurious. You know, it's just nicer on the inside. Plenty of room. Love the huge vertical screen. You know, I know you have issues with vertical screens, but the way they had it laid out, I
didn't have issues with that one.
Yeah, but the way they had everything laid out was perfect. You know, the way Ford lays out stuff on their vertical screens is kind of weird, but the way it's proportioned and all that, it was perfect. It worked great. You could see your maps. You could have other things below that, kind of similar to like the widgets on it kind of reminded me of like the widgets on an iPhone. It kind of reminded me of that. So yeah, it was awesome. Loved it. We had fun. Sebastian cried when he had to take it back, even though it was filthy. We felt so bad. It was so dirty when we take it back. We had a huge
It wasn't our fault though.
We had this huge dust come through from Texas and Oklahoma, and everything was just covered in dust.
And it was a black truck.
Yeah, and luckily it hailed the night before, but I mean, unfortunately, it hailed the night before. Luckily, it didn't come your area, it hit my area. But yeah, I know you were stressing about that, you know, trying to fit it under your carport.
I was. I inched it as close to my door as possible so that all of it or as much of it would fit under the carport as possible.
Yep. So great car, and then we transitioned over to the Hummer. So we were originally supposed to get a Hummer SUV. Once again, huge shout out to Everett in Benton, Arkansas. I get the town right, correct?
Yes.
It is Benton. Okay, good. I gotta get that right.
Benton, Bryant, whatever.
Better.
The GMC store is a little bit close to the line.
Thank you for Everett GMC in Central Arkansas. We'll just say that. I mean, they were great. They had the car. Actually, I believe the SUV we were going to pick up either wasn't charged or wasn't clean, so they didn't want to give that to us. So they gave us another Hummer truck, which we had already done a Hummer truck, but this one was cool. So why was this one cool, Sebastian?
So yeah, this one was the Omega edition.
Omega.
So, for those who aren't familiar with Hummerology, the Omega Edition is a limited edition pack for the 2024 model year. And on the trucks, they only made 550, I believe.
Yep.
And there was like 1,000 SUVs that they made. Anyway, you get this really awesome matte blue color that's also metallic-y.
Mm-hmm.
And you get the extreme off-road package and special black beadlock wheels, and it comes with all the options. So it had the big battery, it was a 3X, so it had the tri-motor. And yeah, it just was the Hummer EV truck, but like baller.
Yep. And I noticed, I mean, we've driven one before. It rides like a Hummer. It's not as quiet as the Sierra EV was because it's got those big, huge, I forget how big those tires were. Were they, 21?
Those were only 18, but they're
18s,
like 37-inch, like 37-inch tires, I believe.
Yeah. And the PSI was what?
Those are actually semi-low. The Silverado, not Silverado, the Sierras were like 70.
Yeah, 70 PSI.
But the Hummer is more off-roady, so you do lower PSI.
So yeah, but the cool thing is it's almost like, a Jeep on steroids. You're able to take off the roof panels, put them in the back. You actually found a kit to take off the little bar in the middle of the roof panels.
Mm-hmm.
In the front seats, you can have it fully opened up there, which is really cool. And yeah, I mean, it's great. It's excessive. No one needs this car. It serves no real purpose unless you just have, this one was how much? 100.
That one was, so MSRP was 150.
Yeah.
It's listed for like 128.
Yeah. So MSRP wise, technically, I think it's the most expensive EV we have driven.
Yes.
Yes, because I think the i7 was right below that, correct?
Yeah, it was like 140.
Yeah, 140. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's great. It's excessive. The review will be out in a few weeks. If you're interested in the Omega Edition, how that is, they got some little bronze accents on the inside. They need to update the software in there to match what GM is currently using, because that software is just,
which is technically the same Android Automotive. It's just a little slower,
yeah. I don't know if it's the processing speed or the chip. It's a little clunky.
Right.
So yeah. I loved it.
But man, that Sierra though, that one there was so much about it that I just loved. And it's a full-size truck.
Yep.
So you have room for days.
And range too.
And range for days. And it did the mid-gate thing, which I thought was neat. Where if you needed extra space in the bed, you fold down your back seat.
And they gave it to you. How much charge was it when they gave it to you?
80%.
And did you charge it all or not?
A little bit. So I attempted to charge it at home, but in order to get my charger cable to reach, I had to back it in. And so I had it plugged in. And then like 2 hours later, it started to potentially look like it was going to storm. And I didn't want the front end of the truck to be potentially hanging out of the carport if it hailed. Yep. I was like, if it's going to hail, I want it to hail on the back of the truck where it's mostly just truck bed, right?
Yep.
Not a giant front grille, solid front grille, etc. So I had to turn the truck around, which meant I had to unplug it, and I couldn't get the cable to reach again and inched it as far forward. And so it was at like 70% when I left the house the next morning. Mm-hmm. And I think I got to Little Rock at 60%, but I got there super early, so I went ahead and stopped at JT's and plugged in for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think it got back up to like from 60% back to like 75.
Yeah.
And it was at like 60 again when we dropped it off.
Yeah. So, I mean, you probably could have made the entire day without charging.
Oh, yeah. 100% could have.
Yeah. You had some time to kill. You're like, hey, let's charge to see what happens. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but yeah, great. You have to realize when we get cars from dealers, we sign all these forms saying you're responsible for this. You damage it, it's on you. And see, I can see like Sebastian sitting in his living room that day, like tracking the weather to see where there's, because we had tornadoes across the state. We had wind gusts of like 60 miles an hour, and Sebastian lives out in the country, knows the place they get hit all the time for these kind of storms. I can just see him just watching the radar, just hoping that it does not hit him with this $100,000 car in his driveway.
Especially considering my normal vehicle is
a bolt. Is a bolt. Yeah. Who cares about the bolt? Put that out in the park without front yard. I don't care if that gets it.
Yeah, it stayed at the dealership overnight, just sitting.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It was at the dealership. Yep. So yep. But yeah, two great cars, and those reviews. You'll see those reviews come out sometime in April.
Yep. All right. Well, y'all, that is a wrap for today's episode. Thank you for plugging into the Friday Charge. Be sure to subscribe to the EV Geek podcast on YouTube, and tap that notification icon to be notified about new releases. Next week, we will release our review of the Polestar 2.
So close.
So close.
So
and
close.
we'll be releasing a video of Joel and I just talking about kind of what our so far long-term ownership experience has been on our two EVs, because we're both getting a little up there in miles.
Yep.
Not like up there, but you know.
If you want to hear two people ramble about their EVs for 25 minutes,
if you want to hear two people ramble for 25 minutes about what they are, like what cars they drive every day and the things they've had to do to them to keep them on the road, you'll enjoy this episode.
A little backstory about that is we were shooting some of the same footage in a parking lot that my son was having a birthday party at. So I had like 25 minutes to kill, and I was like, well, I don't know what I'm gonna do for 25 minutes. Especially like, let's just get out and talk about our cars. Like, okay, cool. So we pulled out the camera and just kind of ad-libbed and talked about our cars a little. And some people will like it, and some people think we're idiots. So.
Yeah, and I was fully expecting it to be like a 10-minute video, be one and done, and I go to start editing it, and I get all the clips in, and it's 25 minutes long. I'm just like, how? How did we do that?
Yep. Your key was 8 minutes, Sebastian. 8 minutes.
I promise, though, it is a good conversation. Like, it wasn't, it's not all trash. It's not all junk. So definitely check it out if you're interested in seeing.
Owning it's like owning an EV for, I believe I have almost 90,000 miles on mine. You have 80,000, 70,000,
something like that, 80,000.
So so if you want to know what it's like owning one for several years, because that's what people start getting the itch. You're like, what happens at 80, 90, 100,000 miles? That's when I start worried about it. We kind of talk about, some of the issues that we have and some of the issues we haven't had.
Yep. All right. If you guys have any thoughts, be sure to drop them in the comments below, because we'd love to hear from you. So long, everyone, and we will see you on the next episode of The Friday Charge.